Come on. And we're back. Awesome.
Cool.
Stream is good. Sorry about that, everybody. Well, if we're ready to do this, let me go ahead and make sure this is good. All right, we are good to go. All right, you ready?
Yes, sir.
3, 2, 1. This episode of the Nerd Cave Retro is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/nerdcave. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player.
You're listening to the Nerd Cave Network.
Greetings, programs, and welcome back to another episode of the Nerd Cave Retro Show. My name is Jason Robbins.
And I'm Derek Diamond.
So, today was getting taxes together day for me, so which is a fun day out of the year, I would say, probably the funnest of days. And I also got to see earlier today, I went and saw A Wrinkle in Time, which I thought was okay. It was pretty good. I don't know if you saw that yet. So how was your week, Mr. Derek?
Well, I have not seen Wrinkle in Time yet. I actually haven't really read any reviews about it. Not from lack of interest. I just haven't really heard anything about it. So you'd say it was okay?
Yeah, it was pretty good. I mean, I read the book when I was a kid, and, it's been such a long time that I don't really remember much from the book. Mm-hmm. But I thought it was okay. You know, it's not something I'll watch all the time, but just to see, it was fine.
Okay.
It didn't blow me out of the seat or anything. I don't go expecting like the greatest movie you've ever seen, but it was okay.
Yeah.
I'd recommend it.
Yeah, I might check it out once it comes out, like on video and whatnot. I actually haven't been. Last movie I think I saw was Black Panther, which wasn't too long ago, so it hasn't been forever since I've been to the movies. But
yeah, I finally got to see that last weekend too. That was really good.
Yeah, it was very, very good. Big thing for me, I'll actually show everyone, is that I finally finished this.
Sweet.
This is my movie script that I've been working on off and on for the past several months. Actually had a mutual friend of ours, Steve Wise, come over to my house last week, and we had a pretty big brainstorming session. I really liked some of his ideas, so I took some of them, tweaked them a bit, added in my own little flair to it. And as of about 3 p.m. yesterday, it is finished.
Awesome.
And I'm pretty happy with it. So now I just got to figure out what to do next.
I know, I got to read it. You sent it to me last night. Derek sent it to me and sent me a text message. It was about 9:30 when you texted me, and I was literally laying in bed in misery because we went over to a friend's house and had dinner, and they had shrimp fajitas, and I knew I should have stopped at one. I knew it. I knew as soon as I bit into the second fajita, because I was just like, ooh, that was so good. I think I'm going to have another one. That was a huge mistake, man. Like, I just can't eat like I used to when I was younger. I'm a 40-year-old man, and I need to do better when it comes to eating, because I was literally laying in bed in misery when you texted me, and I was just like, I'll read it tomorrow.
The Mexican food can fill you up, though.
Oh, God.
Like it's deceptively filling.
Yeah, because you eat it. The thing, you're so hungry, and you eat it so fast, and you're just like, I could eat some more. And then when you have the opportunity to have more, and not like at a restaurant when you have like a finite amount of food on your plate, when you're eating it at someone's house, and they're just like, go get some more, man, we made plenty. And you're just like, I'm going to eat all the food. And then you're on your way home just like, I've made a grave mistake.
The second fajita was a bad choice.
Yes, it was.
But no, the thing with Mexican restaurants, the things that always get me are the chips.
Yeah.
I eat so many chips and salsa, or if I get the queso dip, I'm already full by the time I get my entree.
Yeah.
But I know I have to eat the entree, which I usually get with some rice. And by the end of that, I'm having to be carted, out of the restaurant and then into my car. It's like, oh, I can't eat any more food.
And then the disgusting
I'm never
thing
doing
I
this
do,
again.
the disgusting thing that I do is at a Mexican restaurant is not only do I eat like, the equivalent of like 3 bags of chips and salsa, I eat my regular meal, and then I take the leftover chips. No matter how full I am, I'll take the leftover chips and scrape the remains off my plate with the chips, and I'm just like shoving it down my throat.
I'm so miserable, but I can't. I have to keep eating more.
Yeah, it's awful. Mexican food and Chinese food, man. I go to a Chinese buffet, and it's deceptive how much you're actually eating because it takes what does it take? Like 20 minutes for your brain to realize that you're full. So you'll eat like 4 times the amount of food that you're supposed to eat, and then by the time your brain your brain catches up with your stomach, it's just like, I have done something awful. But that was my night.
Food is so good,
and I've definitely been a little gassy today. So yeah, it's probably it's probably not going to be good later.
Well, that's one of the unfortunate side effects, but it's worth it. Mexican food is so good.
But let's go ahead and we'll move into the news for this week. This week we are celebrating the 1-year anniversary of the Nintendo Switch. Yay!
Yay!
Probably one
I wish we could shoot out confetti and fireworks.
And I still maintain that the Nintendo Switch is the best piece of hardware I bought last year. Easy.
I would agree with that. I was able to get one at launch. I still remember I was working a college baseball tournament the weekend that it came out, because it came out on a Friday, and I had ordered it through Amazon, and I set my phone to get an alert whenever the Switch was delivered. I got the alert around 11:30 that morning, and literally I dropped what I was doing. I said, I've got to go to my apartment, because this is before I lived in my house, but I flew home, grabbed the Switch, brought it to work, and played it for like an hour before the actual game started. And since then, I've loved it. Breath of the Wild I think it's cemented its place as my second favorite Zelda game behind Ocarina of Time. It's just that feeling that you get when you walk out onto the top of the cliff and you see the Great Plateau and you just see all this open area. It's breathtaking. Yeah. And the gameplay is great. The story is to me even a little underrated, because I don't even hear people really talk about the story. I love the dynamic, seeing how Link interacts with the 4 original Guardians, or the 4 champions, I should say. Yeah. It was really good. And Mario Kart 8 Deluxe was great. Mario Odyssey, next to Mario 64, is my favorite of the 3D Mario games. Mm-hmm. And there's more stuff coming out for the Switch that we'll talk about here in a second, but I've loved it. It's been everything that the Wii and the Wii U were not.
Oh yeah, and I didn't even know there was a new Donkey Kong Country game coming out. Mm-hmm. And I saw that a week or 2 ago, and I was like, whoa! I guess they if they're having this come out, I guarantee you we're getting a Metroid sometime this year. I guarantee it.
E3 can't get here soon enough.
I know. I bet Metroid is going to be the big holiday release this year.
Could be. Very well could be. But what's been your impression of the Switch? Because I know you got yours a little bit later. Yeah. But how have your impressions with it been?
Oh, I could not be happier with it. Just the AAA titles as far as Zelda, Mario, Mario Kart. Those are must-haves for the system. If you're going to get a Nintendo Switch, those are the big 3 to get right now. But I haven't played Splatoon or anything like that. I hear how good it is, but it's just, I haven't played it. But I also got Blaster Master Zero off the Nintendo Store, and that's been really good. And just the amount of indie titles, cheap titles that you can get that are good for the Nintendo Switch, all the stuff that's going to be coming. And I know that, I feel like, it was very top heavy with all the good games that came out and, at launch in the first year of the Nintendo Switch. The second year might be a little bit lax, but I'm okay with that because there's a plenty to get us through. Even if they don't come out with Metroid this year, if they wait till, 2019 or so, I'm okay with that because, if the second year can be a little bit lax on the first party titles, but I think by the time we get to the end of this year into 2019, we should really be getting a lot of news as far as, good first party titles like Metroid and stuff like that, possibly another Mario, 2D Mario coming, and third party stuff. Like I heard a rumor that what's the name of it? The Rockstar game, the Red Dead Redemption 2 might be coming out on the Switch, and I'm excited for that because I loved Red Dead Redemption. And if I can lay in my bed at night and play Red Dead Redemption 2, I'll be a happy boy.
I didn't hear about that. That would be awesome.
Oh yeah, I know it's just a rumor. Don't take everything I say with a grain of salt, but I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I heard a rumor that Red Dead Redemption may come out on the Switch. So if that happens, I'll be very happy about that. But I think there's going to be a lot of third-party support coming out for the Switch very, very soon.
If Nintendo drops that little bit of news at E3, people are going to lose their mind.
They will. Dude, people are ready for Red Dead Redemption 2. I don't know if you ever played the first one, but that was probably, other than, I think Mass Effect 2 and Red Dead Redemption were probably my two favorite experiences on the Xbox 360.
Yeah, Red Dead Redemption was definitely up there. I didn't play it until a little bit later after it had been out for a while, but the Rockstar games are really good. Another one, if you haven't ever played it, you should check out L.A. Noire. It's actually been re-released for the Switch. Great game.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about picking that up. I haven't gotten it yet. I've been a little light on money because of all the traveling and stuff I've had to do, and all the traveling I have coming up in the next month. So hopefully by the time my birthday gets here, maybe I'll hit up the in-laws or something and see if they'll give me some Switch games for my birthday.
Oh, you never know.
That'd be nice.
But to kind of segue into our second news story, I had those same concerns where, Mario and Zelda both came out in year one of the Switch. Yeah. So I was like, where do they go from here? So Nintendo dropped a Nintendo Direct last week, and Nintendo is not going away anytime soon. This comes to us from NintendoLife.com. Following the brief yet packed Nintendo Direct Mini back in January, we entered this month's proper-sized Nintendo Direct with equal amounts of excitement and anticipation. What we got were a handful of rumors proved true, including South Park: The Fractured Butthole and Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy, which I'm really excited about. I'll probably actually trade in the PlayStation version and get it for the Switch because I'd prefer to play it on that.
Wow.
Surprises, tons of support for Splatoon 2, and the reveal we'd all been waiting for, which I personally think is going to be the big holiday release for the Switch, a new Super Smash Brothers.
That's awesome.
Now, a lot of people think this is going to be a port from the Wii U version, but I don't think so, because they've had plenty of time to work on this. From the brief descriptions that you could see, even on the main thumbnail of this article, it's got Link from Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
Not the classic green tunic look. So I personally think that this is going to be a brand new game. But other games that they've confirmed, Captain Toad Treasure Tracker, which should be a really fun puzzle game. Dark Souls Remastered. Luigi's Mansion will be coming out, being remade for the 3DS, which was kind of an underrated game. It was really short, but I enjoyed it for what it was. A game that I love the N64 version of this, so this one should be fun too. Mario Tennis Aces for the Switch should be a lot of fun. So lot of stuff coming up with Nintendo. The Direct was great. I didn't get to see it live, unfortunately, but as soon as the Smash Brothers announcement dropped, I was like, that Nintendo, they know what they're doing now. I think they're finally on track.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I was looking at some of the other stuff that's coming out for the Nintendo Switch. I want to check out this game, Little Nightmares. I've heard a lot about this game, and if I get it, if I can get it soon and play it, I might actually do. I want to do a review on some Switch games, and I'd like to do a re-review of Blaster Master for Blaster Master Zero, and if I could do Little Nightmares, that'd be awesome to do some reviews of those, because I've talked about Blaster Master a couple of episodes back. If you got a Switch and you got 10 extra bucks, go on the Nintendo Switch store, get Blaster Master Zero, because it is such a fun throwback to Blaster Master and made it even better. So I've had such a good time playing that game. I want to get Derek to play it too, so we can both do a dual review of it.
I will give you my word, and I will say it publicly on this show. I will get the game this week.
Fantastic. It's only $10. You can't go wrong with $10.
Yeah.
That's a lot of fun. It's like, it took me 5 hours to get through it, or a little over 5 hours. So, it's like $2 an hour of entertainment. Yeah. So I think that's worth it.
Oh, for sure.
But if we're ready to, we can actually go into this month in video game history. Let's see. In March of 1982, Atari releases the Atari 2600 version of Pac-Man. 12 million cartridges are produced, 7 million are sold. It's believed to be one of the causes of the North American video game crash of 1983, which is funny because they produced 12 million cartridges, but there were only 8 million 2600s out in the public. They thought Pac-Man was going to be such a system seller that they produced millions more than they actually needed.
A little bit of overconfidence on their part.
A little bit.
I've heard about the North American video game crash of 83, but I'll be honest, I didn't really know that much about it until I was looking up articles to put for this month in gaming history. It's a pretty interesting story.
Oh, yeah, and everybody kind of likes to point at not only E.T., but Pac-Man, but there was so much going on at the time. And actually, we could do a whole episode on what caused the video game crash, because not only was it overconfidence, but, Nintendo came along in 85 or 86, whenever it was released, whenever it made its American debut. They were kind of stringent with their policies as far as what games could come out for the system. That's why they had the Nintendo seal of quality, which actually I forgot to point out. If everybody can look behind Derek right now, he has his Super Mario Brothers 3 poster signed by Charles Martinet. I've got mine up above my head here, so you can't see it on screen, but it's right in my line of sight. But yeah, it's Nintendo came along. You had to have that Nintendo seal of quality. You had to go through Nintendo, and plus you could, if you were a publisher, you could only do 3 titles a year, and that's why I think was it Konami, or it was either Konami or I can't remember who it was, but Ultra, who did games like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and stuff like that, they were actually a subsidiary of, I think it was Konami. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was Konami, to kind of get around Nintendo's, stringent policies. But before that, like back on the Atari, just anybody can make a game. Like, Johnson & Johnson would make a game, or, everybody was trying to get in on the video game market. So you had this flood of just crap video games that came out in the market, and with no real way of knowing what's good and what's not good, because we didn't have the internet back then, and didn't even have like video game magazines back then. You just walked into the store and you saw, some crazy game, and you bought it, and then it sucked, and there were more sucky games than there were good games. So that's what really caused the crash, is there was no kind of oversight on that kind of stuff, and people got overconfident and just too many crap games out there, and Nintendo came along and said, "We got this."
Yeah, it's a really fascinating story. Everyone should Google it, and I like the idea of dedicating maybe a whole episode to what really caused it. I think that would be a lot of fun.
If we could get like the the gaming historian on the show. I think that'd be fun.
Awesome.
Get him on here and talk about that. I might try to hit him up again on Twitter, or if anybody knows him, Norm, the gaming historian, please hit him up and let him know that we want to get him on the show so we can just dedicate an episode to the crash of '83.
That would be awesome. Also in March of 1993, Nintendo releases Kirby's Adventure. It introduced Kirby's ability to take on the powers of enemies he has eaten, which would go on to become a staple of the franchise. I know you were never a huge Kirby fan. I've actually never played Kirby's Adventure, and I didn't even know that this was the game that introduced that ability. Like, I remember playing Kirby's Dream Land for the Game Boy way back in the day, but you could never gain the enemy's abilities. You would just eat your enemy, or you could spit it out in the shape of a star. So I thought that was a pretty interesting fact, because that's kind of what Kirby's known for. I mean, if you play as Kirby in Super Smash Brothers, his main thing is if you swallow Link, then you get the little green hat and the sword. If you swallow Mario, you get the ability to shoot fireballs. So I thought that was kind of an interesting take. And this was a game that I actually wouldn't mind trying, because, like I said, I've never played any of the other Kirby games besides the original Dreamland.
Yeah, if I could find one for the NES just out in the wild for a couple of bucks, I'll pick it up. But I don't really have any nostalgia for Kirby whatsoever. Yeah, that was a title that just completely just passed me by. It just didn't look like anything I would be interested in at the time, so I just didn't even give it time of day.
Yeah.
But everybody says they're great games. Even though they're kind of easy, they're still fun. I mean, I'll give it a try, but I'm not going to go out of my way to play Kirby's Adventure.
Yeah. But I know we have nostalgia for this next game.
Oh, yes. On March 19th of 1994, Super Metroid for the Super Nintendo is released, distributed by a 24 megabit cartridge, the largest of its time, called The Best Game of All Time by Electronic Gaming Monthly in 2002. I'm not going to say it's the best game of all time, but it's definitely up there, probably in the top 10.
Mm-hmm. Definitely one of, if someone made an argument that this was the greatest Super Nintendo game ever made, I think you could present a good case.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't call it the best game of all time, because there's so many factors have to go into what is really the greatest video game of all time. It's the same thing with movies, because everyone is subjective. Everyone has their own genre they like. It's tough to say, but I would definitely put it, as far as best Super Nintendo games of all time, it's definitely in the top 5.
Yeah, and if you ask me, which would you rather have, like a desert island situation, you can either have Super Metroid or Metroid for the NES. Which one would you rather have? I'd rather have Super Metroid. I mean, as much as I like the original Metroid, Super Metroid was it was everything it was everything you wanted on the Super Nintendo. It took the original game and just graphics were better, the sound chip was better, the graphics and the physics in the game were just almost perfect. And it's weird, because I actually have been playing this the last few weeks on an emulator, and was thinking about actually doing a review of it, but do a dual review of it and the first Metroid, do kind of like a comparison of the two. I think that'd be fun to do. We could actually do that together if you wanted to. If you want to maybe set that for give us a month or two to kind of play both games and see, which one, not really, we don't have to finish them, but definitely play them a good bit to see which one we think is better of the two. Because I think once it moved into the GameCube era and it became like a first-person shooter type of thing, it kind of, I put those in a kind of different category. Don't get me wrong, I love Metroid Prime and all that stuff, but those are a complete different experience than the 2D side scrollers.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great idea. Because I've funny story, only briefly played the NES Metroid. I've played the crap out of Super Metroid, but never quite got into the original one. So it would be interesting to actually go back and attempt to play through it.
Yeah, I had the original. It was one of the first games I ever bought with my own money when I first got my Nintendo as a kid. I bought Metroid. I remember the day I bought it. I was in Kmart, and I had been saving my money for like months. And I bought it, and the game is so good, but it's so hard that I remember the only way I could finish that game was with the Justin Bailey cheat code. And the only way I knew that was the kids at school were like, dude, you got to go home and play Metroid and put in the code Justin Bailey and you get to play this chick in her swimsuit. I'm like, okay. And I went home and did it. And of course, there's Samus Aran in her swimsuit.
Yeah.
Like, then you get to play the whole last level of the game. So I was like, that's cool. And it blew our minds, too, that Samus was a woman. Like,
yeah,
wow, women can shoot laser guns too. It's awesome.
I'm telling you, now is the time that Nintendo needs to jump on getting a Metroid movie made.
Yeah, or a TV series on Netflix.
It would be so good.
They're missing
Either
out.
one would be great.
Oh yeah,
it would be so good. But our last bit of this month in video game history for this week's episode, on March 21st, 1999, Pokemon Snap is released for the Nintendo 64. This was a game that I reviewed several weeks ago. Pokemon spawned a lot of spin-offs, some good, some not so good. But this is one of the better ones. You know, it's simple concept. You ride in this machine and you take pictures of Pokemon. It sounds dumb, but it's one of the most addictive games that I've ever played and one of my favorite games for the Nintendo 64.
You know, I might get it for emulator and see what it's about, because you talked about it and how fun it is. I'd like to go check it out because I've never played a Pokemon game in my life.
Yep.
I wouldn't even know where to start if I tried to play a Pokemon game, but this one sounds like one I could ease into to kind of ease me into the world of Pokemon.
Yeah, I would be very interested to hear your thoughts as someone who's never played a Pokemon game, period.
Yeah.
I think it'd be fun.
I might do that. I'll let you know. I might go and download it tonight and give it a whirl.
For sure.
But Derek, have you been listening to anything, any kind of books or anything the last few weeks?
Yeah, let's talk about some books. For you, the listeners of the Nerd Cave Retro podcast, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. Now, Audible's got a ton of books, and they have every genre you can think of.
How many do they have, Derek?
Oh, how many? I feel like I'm on Match Game. But no, they have fiction, nonfiction, sci-fi. They've got a ton of Star Wars books that we've talked about, you know, throughout the various episodes that we've done. They have nonfiction, fantasy, romance, gaming. They have books from the Halo series, Gears of War, Mass Effect, World of Warcraft. Any genre you can think of, Audible has. And if you're always on the go like I am, Audible is a great service to have to be able to continue to read without having to sit down and read a physical copy. And if you want to do that, just go to audibletrial.com/nerdcave. Again, that's audibletrial.com/nerdcave for your free audiobook download and 30-day free trial.
And this week we're going to be talking about... I think everybody knows what that music is, especially a child of the 90s.
Oh, for sure. This week, I will be reviewing one of the most popular games for the Nintendo 64, Goldeneye.
Yes.
Goldeneye is a first-person shooter video game developed by Rare and based on the 1995 James Bond film Goldeneye. It was released for the Nintendo 64 video game console in August of 1997. Over 10 or no 20 years ago, actually. Wow,
years
that's
ago.
Insane to think about.
21 years ago?
Yeah.
Oh.
I I know. I keep thinking the 90s were a decade ago, but I was like, nope, it's 20.
Speaking of the 90s, I hate to derail you for a second, but have you started when I was laying in bed in complete misery last night, I started watching that show Everything Sucks on Netflix. Have you seen that yet?
I have not.
It's not that great, but it's kind of fun because it's all about the 90s. So I'd give it a whirl, especially if you're a child of the 90s like we were.
So are you saying that a show called Everything Sucks?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't suck. I don't want to say that, but it's definitely a little melodramatic for my taste.
I would just love the irony if that were the case.
Yeah.
So to talk a little bit about Goldeneye, I've used this analogy the last couple of weeks. When you mention a console, there are always 3 or 4 games that are synonymous with that console. Like I think it's safe to say with the NES, you've got the original Mario, Zelda, Duck Hunt, Contra, Castlevania. Mm-hmm. With the Super Nintendo, you've got Mario World, Link to the Past, Super Metroid. And then you go on to the N64, you've got Mario 64, Ocarina of Time, Banjo-Kazooie. GoldenEye is right up there. And my first memory of GoldenEye, because I didn't get this game right when it came out. I didn't play it until probably close to a year after it came out. But I remember in the Nintendo Power magazine, they would have the top 10 list of top selling Nintendo games for that month. And GoldenEye, when it came out, it was number 1 every week for over a year.
Yeah.
And that was what sparked because I like James Bond, but I was never like a diehard Bond fan growing up. So I was like, I've got to check this game out if it's really that popular.
Well, that was the good thing about the game is you didn't have to be a James Bond fan it's by far probably one of the best licensed games ever. I'll say that it's probably the best licensed game that's ever been made.
I agree with that 100%. Because if you think about it, more often than not, the licensed games turn out to really not be that great.
Yeah.
But GoldenEye was awesome. And I thought it actually adapted the movie fairly well, which a lot of adapted games don't do. Now, going back and replaying it, because I've had the copy for a while, but I haven't really sat down and played it. And then when I posted the poll out on the Nerd Cave Facebook page, and GoldenEye won in a landslide, which kind of shocked me. So I was like, well, I guess I'm going to be reviewing GoldenEye. So I went back and dove in, and I will say, for the most part, it does still hold up. Now, there are a couple of things that were kind of meh about it. Number one being the graphics, but I also kind of say that a lot of the N64 graphics weren't that great because Ocarina of Time graphic-wise does not hold up. Like, it's not a very great-looking game.
I would
because
say that
with the N64, you had all the...
Go ahead. I'd say that for most of the N64 games, especially that era of the Nintendo 64 and the PlayStation, that polygonal graphic stuff, it doesn't hold up. And that's why I'm kind of apprehensive if they make a mini N64, because I just don't think that stuff holds up as much as people think it does.
And that's a very good point. Reading some of the schematics about it, standard definition wasn't around back then. But playing this game, especially on a high-res TV, was not a very pleasant experience. And I found out that, you want to know what the resolution that this game was made in?
Probably 240 by 64 or something like that.
You're actually not too far off. It was made in 320 by 240.
Ooh.
Yeah. And the frame rate drops pretty badly, especially when you've got, if 3 or more enemies show up on screen, the frame rate drops pretty significantly, and it's pretty frustrating.
Well, do you think it would have been better if you'd have played this on a CRT television and not played, the campaign, but played like a 4-player co-op? 4-player, player versus player battle. Mm-hmm. Because I think that's what 90% of the nostalgia for the game is.
And that was going to be one of my later points, is that me, the multiplayer... Oh, no, you're good. I mean, you had mentioned that, you spent hours and hours playing Goldeneye, and I bet a lot of that was with the multiplayer.
Well, yeah, because one of my best friends from high school, his house, they had one of the old school big screen TVs, back in the day. So you could play 4-player and still be able to see everything like really good. So it was really fun to play 4-player, and we did that a lot. Like there was many weekends spent playing Goldeneye.
Yeah, that's I think the most popular thing, honestly, about Goldeneye is not the campaign, but it's everybody I know that played Goldeneye back in the day. They jump right to the multiplayer.
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, I played the multiplayer a little bit after I got into the game originally, but by the time I did, it had kind of died off a little bit. So I only got to play the multiplayer a handful of times, but I still very much enjoyed the campaign because even if it's a straightforward adaptation of the movie, it can still be fun if you have good gameplay. And I will say, excuse me, the controls were a little bit to get used to. It was a little clunky at first, and God, we've said it so many times, but God, that controller sucks.
Yeah, it wasn't the greatest. I mean, it was a necessary step from, the controllers of, the Super Nintendo and the Nintendo days. It was the necessary step to go from that to, the dual analog. And Derek's frozen. Oh, you're back.
Okay, good. I was about to say you didn't break up at all.
Oh, well.
Interesting. Right. But no, once you get used to it, the controls really aren't that bad. I went back and read a few reviews, and several people said that they weren't a fan of the controls as far as them not holding up. But once you get used to it, it's really not that bad.
Yeah, that's what I noticed when I was playing. I went back and played Resident Evil 2. Was, man, the first 20, 30 minutes of the game were just awful because I couldn't get used to the controller. And then once I got used to the controller again, it was like, all right, it's starting to come back to me. Because you have to retrain your brain to go from dual analog to a single analog. And you're just like, it's like trying to drive a tank with one tread, broken. So it's like, it's awful.
Pretty much. I did want to ask you this because I was thinking about it. Like during the 90s, we had those successful first-person shooters like Doom and Quake. Was this the first really successful first-person shooter for a console?
I think so. Yeah, because I remember they had... Didn't they have Doom? Well, Doom came out for the Super Nintendo. And it was really big as far as computers, but I don't think it did all that well when it was put on a console. At least I don't remember it doing that well. But I think GoldenEye was really the first, first-person shooter that really kind of broke into the mainstream.
That's what I was thinking too, because when I think of games like Doom, I associate it with the PC version. Like, I'll be honest, I didn't even know that there was a Doom for the Super Nintendo.
Yeah, and you got to think that, like, this came out in August of 97. 3 years later, we had Halo. And you think of, like, not only the graphical upgrades, but just the controller scheme and, the storytelling and multiplayer, how far it came in that 3-year span.
Mm-hmm. It's crazy to think about, really.
Yeah.
Like this really kind of set the standard and really changed the first-person shooting and really, I think, put it on the map. And we talked about it being one of the most popular games for the N64. As far as the reception went, it says, despite low expectations among the gaming media and an unsuccessful showing at E3 in Atlanta, I had no idea it was ever in Atlanta, in 97, GoldenEye turned out to be both a critical and a commercial success. Received very high critical praise and sold more than 8 million units worldwide, which was phenomenal at the time. Like newer listeners, or as far as those who might be a little bit younger, are thinking, well, it's really not that much. But back then that was a lot. That was a lot of copies.
Well, you got to figure there were probably only 8 million N64s at the time, so they probably sold 1 to 1 as far as consoles go that are out, public owned consoles. So that's huge for the time.
Yeah. See, it sold more than 8 million units worldwide, making it the third best-selling Nintendo 64 game, only behind Super Mario 64 and Mario Kart 64.
Wow.
And the game grossed $250 million worldwide.
Yeah, Rare was riding high at this time, especially the
Rare
N64 era.
It's a shame what Rare has become, because they made some of the greatest games that I've ever played.
Oh, yeah.
But now you never hear about them. Like, I don't even know what their newest game is.
I don't either. It's been so long since I've heard the name Rare and like a new game coming out, you know?
Their biggest mistake was when they left Nintendo.
Yeah. I mean, doesn't Rare usually just make physics engines at this point is pretty much what they do?
I think so. But honestly, I'm not 100% sure. Like, I haven't heard of Rare doing... I know they made a few games for Xbox 360, but the only one I ever played was the Banjo-Kazooie game, which was garbage because it was nothing like the original platformers.
Yeah, and I think I actually saw something on here. There was the other... it was Acclaim. That's who I was trying to think of earlier, was Acclaim. It wasn't Konami that had Ultra that put out Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It was Acclaim. Ultra was a subsidiary of Acclaim, and I think LJN was also, because the people that made all the crap LJN games then went on to make great games. So they kind of cut their teeth making crap games and then moved on to better games. But I was looking on here, Turok Dinosaur Hunter, and I heard the other day they were putting out a Turok Dinosaur Hunter, I think 1, 2, and 3. Let me look up real quick. Re-releasing Turok.
Really?
Yeah. Maybe.
Used to love playing that in the arcade.
Yeah. Let's see. This is from February 24th on Game Informer. Remastered Turok games hit Xbox next month. But I think it's kind of... Yeah, they didn't do any kind of like graphical upgrades or anything. It's straight ports of the Nintendo 64 Turok games. And I think,
boy.
Oh, and they're asking $20 a piece. I'm like, are you nuts? What? Are you crazy? Nobody's going to pay $20 for Turok, especially that looks like that and plays like that. Are you nuts?
Talk about overconfidence.
Yeah, I don't think Turok holds the name that they think it does. I mean, I remember Turok games. I thought they were fun on the Nintendo 64, but you can't put that out today and ask $20 for it.
Ugh. But anyway, back to GoldenEye. The gameplay was highlighted for its depth, which that's something that, playing through it again, I really liked, was the replayability, because you can go through a mission on, like, say, medium difficulty, because I think there was Agent, Secret Agent, and then 00.
Yeah. And
then you could unlock the fourth difficulty, 007, which was, like, impossible to do.
I forgot about that.
So it's, to me, that shows great replayability, because I can go through on medium, go through the mission, and then I want to go back and do it on a harder difficulty just to see if I could do it. And it's easily accessible. Like, I love the menu screen where you can just highlight the mission you want to do. You can go back really at any time and play any mission that you want, which I thought was great.
Yeah.
But listen to some of these review scores that it was given. Edge gave it 9 out of 10. Game Revolution A-, IGN 9.7, Nintendo Power 9 out of 10, Gaming Age 9.1 out of 10.
Wow, it's got a Metacritic score of 96 out of 100.
That's so insane. Like, this is one of the best reviewed games ever. And everyone thinks, they associate licensed games with crap. And most of them are, but GoldenEye, to me, is much more than just a licensed game. Like, as far as being successful on that end, this set the standard for first-person shooters.
Oh, yeah. And it even said something about here. It was only, let's see, said something about Halo, because Halo came out Yeah, it says Edge stated that GoldenEye 007 set the standard for multiplayer console combat until it was surpassed by the release of Halo Combat Evolved in 2001. With its 8 million copies sold, GoldenEye was one of the most significant titles that helped the Nintendo 64 to remain competitive with rivals Sony PlayStation, even though the console ultimately lost much of its market share.
How crazy is it to think that Halo is almost 20 years old?
I know. It's nuts, man. Like LAN parties. I loved LAN parties, man.
That was how I spent my Fridays and Saturdays in high school, was playing Halo.
Oh, that was so fun. You go over to your friend's house, we would all bring our own TVs, all bring our own Xboxes, and we would all get in different rooms, or we would put the TVs like in a circle and like all sit around in a circle. Like, oh, it was great. I miss those days.
Yeah. Get mad at your friends when they would watch your screen.
Get some beer and pizza.
Oh man. I wasn't quite old enough for that, but that came when was it Halo 3 and Halo Reach. There was plenty of beer and pizza with those.
Oh yeah.
But what is there else to say about GoldenEye? I mean, it's one of the greatest N64 games of all time, one of the most influential games of all time. Rare actually made a spiritual successor to this game called Perfect Dark in 2000 that I'm going to review on a future episode. It's not as good as GoldenEye, but it's still a very solid first-person shooter, and I'm excited to go back and revisit that, because I felt like that was arguably Rare's most underrated game that they ever made. So I'll be reviewing that in a few weeks. But as far as GoldenEye goes, despite the graphics, which I associate that with most N64 games, I would give this a solid 9 out of 10. It still holds up to me. Anybody who wants to collect N64 games, this is a must-have for your collection. And yeah, go play it.
And I think that's why the Nintendo 64 still sell pretty well too. You can still get Nintendo 64s for pretty cheap, and it already has 4-player plugins in the front of the console. You don't have to get any kind of peripherals to play 4-player. It's automatically built into the system, so it's automatically a party machine. So you get a Nintendo 64 and a copy of GoldenEye, and you get 3 other friends together, and you have a pretty fun Saturday night. Like that's just, I think that's why it's held its ground for so long. Even though the graphics are probably kind of gross, I still think that years from now people are still going to be talking about GoldenEye for the Nintendo 64. Because when I think of the Nintendo 64, GoldenEye it comes into my head faster than even Mario 64, because I had more time playing GoldenEye than I ever did I think I played more GoldenEye than any other Nintendo 64 game.
Fantastic.
So I keep it in high regard, even though I haven't played it in 20 years. I'd like to, but I don't want to tarnish that memory, because I might look at the graphics and be like, what were we thinking?
I mean, despite the graphics, it's still a fun game to play.
Yeah.
So I would recommend going and giving it another shot, because I was the same.
Well, if I'm going to play
remember last week. Oh, go ahead.
If I'm going to play it, I'm going to come over to your house and play it on an actual N64, not just like emulate it or play it by myself. I'd rather play it with other people and play multiplayer.
Well, speaking of that, we are doing the survey panel here in a couple of weeks, so I might have to go out and buy a extra N64 controller.
I can always just bring mine.
While everyone else is doing the audio commentaries, we'll play some GoldenEye.
Yeah, that'd be fun. I'm down for that.
Yeah.
But that's going to bring the show to a close, unless you got some final words about GoldenEye.
No, I think that pretty much covers it. I still think, it still holds up for the most part, and anyone who wants to play it should absolutely do it.
Awesome. Well, like I said, we're going to be recording 2 episodes tonight, so anybody watching on Twitch right now or anything, please stick around. We're going to take about a 2 or 3 minute break to get switched over to the next show. So Derek, you had a really good interview come out this week. Tell everybody about that show. It was so good.
So I got the chance to interview Mr. Bill Corbett, who is one of the writers and voice of Crow T. Robot from Mystery Science Theater 3000. Got to chat with him for a few minutes at Pensacon a couple of weeks ago. Super nice guy. I recommend that anybody go listen to it. And it's funny because when I was editing the interview, I sounded like I was really tired in the beginning. So I was like, oh, this is going to sound awful. And then, I posted. And not just you, but other people have said that was one of the best episodes you've ever done. I was like, oh, I didn't really think so, but sure.
It was good, man. It was really good.
It was a lot of fun. So definitely go check that out. This Tuesday, I'll be doing a Facebook Live AMA to celebrate 4 years of my show. This Saturday, actually, will be the 4-year anniversary of my solo show, which is insane to think about.
Awesome.
So check that out this Tuesday, which will be March 13th at 7:30 p.m. Central Standard Time at facebook.com/DDiamondPodcast. And I will throw this little shout out there. The reason why we're doing 2 episodes tonight is because this time next week, I will be in Los Angeles.
Sweet. That's I'm very jealous because I've never been to I've been to LAX for a layover, but I've never actually been to LA. Hopefully next month I'll get to make a little trip if Mr. Joey Image wants to take me into New York for the day. Maybe I could go visit New York. But yeah, we've both been doing a bit of traveling these last few months, so it's been fun.
Yeah, and we've been talking off air about projects that we're working on. So if those can come to fruition, I think 2018 will be a pretty darn good year.
I'm looking forward to a good year. Something where I can I've had some good stuff happen, but I'm waiting for the big, the big thing to happen. That's what I'm waiting on. I need some money. That's what I need.
You're waiting for is what we in the South call the biggin.
The biggin. That's exactly it. But actually, this last week, I was on 2 separate podcasts as a guest. I was on Mr. Jeremy Branch's weekly pop podcast. Go check that out. You can follow him on Twitter at JeremyBTerrible. That was a fun episode to do. We talked about what we could do to make the Oscars better. Talked about a few other things. And I was also on the Brownwater Banter podcast. It's at BrownwaterB. You can go listen to that episode. And also, regular episodes of Pop Culture Palette. We got one coming out this week. Go check that out. We're going to be talking with Mr. Hammond Chamberlain from at JHammondC on Twitter. He's on the Beyond the Playlist podcast. And we're going to be talking to him. That's going to be fun. And I think that's about it for this week. So anything else you want to throw in before we get out of here?
No, I don't think so. I think that does it.
Let me make sure the music is turned up here, and I will play it. And if you would like to email us, you can email us at nerdcaveretro@gmail.com. We're at nerdcaveretro.com. We're on Instagram and Twitter at nerdcaveretro, at jfunktastic, and at Derek_Diamond individually. And we're at Facebook at facebook.com/nerdcaveretro. And Derek, did you celebrate Mario Day yesterday, March 10th?
I did. Yes, absolutely.
Yes. So I tweeted that out, and I didn't know Mario was a day. So I guess that's a yearly thing we're going to be doing now. Yeah. So that's awesome. But tell them what it's all about, Derek.
May the way of the hero lead to the Triforce.
You've been listening to a Nerd Cave Network production.
Alrighty, that was episode 75.
Almost to 100.
75. And I guess I will. Did you need to go? Let me go ahead and stop the stream real quick, everybody. We'll be back momentarily if you want to watch us on Twitch to do the next episode. We'll see you guys in a few minutes, and we'll see everybody else next week. Bye.